I just replaced the steering box on my 68 Mustang convertible with one of those Flaming River 16-to-1 manual steering boxes, and I just wanted to share a couple things I learned from the experience in the hopes that maybe it'll help one of you out there. So there's the steering box. If we look underneath here, you can see there's the pitman arm, and there's where it bolts onto the steering box. You see those splines there on the steering box. It can be difficult to get the pitman arm to seat up onto those splines. And then once it's seated up, you tighten this nut in order to get it to slide on. The first tip I'm going to mention is when you've got this nut off and the pitman arm and you're sliding it on and you're trying to align the splines, you want to make sure the steering box is in the neutral position. So if you see those two white lines there, they're kind of difficult to see. That's my steering box centered. So what that means is that the tires are pointed straight forward, so the steering box is in that neutral position. The car would roll straight forward. So when I attach the pitman arm, I want the steering box to be in that position. It just reduces wear on it. If it's off center, it means to go straight, you would continually have the steering box turned, you know, as opposed to just being sort of sitting there naturally. It came with these white marks from Flaming River, but you can find center yourself if you just sort of turn it, you know, end to end and then find the middle spot. The other point I'll note is that as you're trying to line up the pitman arm and get it to slide up on, the splines aren't all the same. There's 4 flat ridges, which I'll show you on the old steering box that I removed. What I wanted to show you while I'm under the car here is that you can turn the rag joint at the same time as you're attaching the pitman arm to align and fine-tune the splines. So just keep in mind, you can see my right arm is up there on the rag joint. There's the rag joint. So if this nut were off and I were pushing up on the pitman arm with my left hand instead of holding this phone, I would be using my right hand to wiggle the rag joint just to have a little play back and forth so that those splines will align as the pitman seats. And once the pitman starts seating up onto the splines, you'll know it's in the right spot. Then you can quickly cinch up the nut. And once it's aligned, it'll stay aligned. But that's a bit of the trick that I missed the first time, and I was wrestling with it and couldn't get it to seat, and then eventually got to it. What I'll show you now over here on my horrible little model, here's the old steering box, and here's what I'm talking about. If you look here, see that flat spot? That's one of the splines. And there's 4 of those on it. So you can see there's another one. So those, they're basically at the sort of 12, 3, 9, and 6 positions. I marked them on the bottom of the new steering box. And then I also marked on the splines on the pitman arm, and this is my awful model of a pitman arm. I marked the same thing. So when I went to put the pitman arm on, I could sort of get a sense of what the rough alignment was before I started to try and push the pitman arm up and on. And then, as I mentioned, as I was pushing the pitman arm up and on with the splines aligned, which I had marked just with a felt pen, I wiggled the rag joint with my other hand, and then once it's seated up on, it suddenly sort of slid down and on, and I realized, okay, it's in full alignment now. And once I got that nut on it so it couldn't come off, I could then start working on tightening it, because it'll sort of, the nut will cinch it down onto those splines so the pitman arm will sit on there. Anyway, that's all I had for you. I hope that's helpful and saves someone sort of learning it the hard way like I did. Thanks.